Hi there. Welcome back to the original Geek Corner. That's what I'm gonna have to call it now because someone sent me a link to another YouTuber who has another show called Geek Corner. I'm pretty sure I did a search on it when I started and that title wasn't used before, but who knows? We're always stepping on each other's ideas. I am John Lorden, and speaking of stepping on ideas, today we're gonna talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. Now, I actually saw this on opening weekend. I didn't realize it was opening weekend for that, or I probably wouldn't have gone because usually I don't like sitting in a totally crowded theater. And I didn't realize it was opening weekend for it. It was actually opening night that I went to see it because the theater was maybe only a third to at the most a half full. Yeah, so I don't know how it's doing in terms of numbers, but in terms of content, that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. I did review the first reboot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles back in 2014, so I'm gonna have a link to my review of that down below. Kind of different, kind of interesting to rewatch that and just see how things have changed in terms of what I do, which is kind of cool. But a lot of the points, oh, Shelby wants to say hi. Shelby, what are you doing? Say hi to everybody. Here's Shelby. Shelby has a lot to say about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You be a good boy. So some of the points they have addressed. I remember one of the main things. Now Shelby wants to bump the tripod, so if you see a little earthquake happening, that's just him. One of the big points in my first review that they addressed was at least some of the design elements of the turtles, in particular their faces. They were doing this thing in the 2014 version where it's almost like they fused a human face with this turtle face, and there was something extremely creepy. I think I had commented that they were nightmarish looking. Honestly, they could have been characters that were in a horror movie. They were just they were really ugly. And someone on Reddit went and actually did a little redesign where they kind of reintroduced the bulbous nose and they removed the human features, in particular the very human nose and lips that were coming through on the turtles. And they looked great. I mean, it looked like the turtles that we all remember. So in this movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, they have definitely stepped towards that. The hyper-realistic nose and mouth elements have been washed away, have been smoothed over a bit, and they look a bit more like their cartoon counterparts. But one of the things that I was really harping on in the first review I did on it was that the turtles, there's a simple joke that they're missing about these Ninja Turtles. And you could see it from the earliest comics all the way through the cartoon series in the 80s and 90s to the Jim Henson movie. And even in their current forms on Nickelodeon, at least from the designs that I'm seeing, they've still held on to this idea. The turtles are not giant. Yes, they can have somewhat muscular arms, but they are not built like Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're not supposed to have abs and big giant pecs and huge shoulders. There's a simple joke in all that. They're supposed to, first of all, look like turtles. Second, in terms of them fighting against humans, like the Foot Clan when they're dressed up, you get this weird, it's almost like a subconscious reaction where you're not really sure who you want to win because they are now these giant steroided out turtles and they're fighting humans that look smaller than them on screen, and I don't think that is working very well. Also, something else that doesn't work really well for me in this new film franchise is just the thought of animated fights. I noticed within me that there was a reaction that I had when I saw an actor that was fighting, for example, like the Foot Clan, Shredder, you know, the roles that are played by actors. There is a level of excitement that I feel rise inside of me when I see someone doing awesome stunts and stunt work, and that's kind of what those types of fights in, you know, even in old martial arts films are about. You're impressed by the form of the human body being able to do something, and you're like, wow, I wish I could do that. But when you see a computer animated character, no matter what they're doing, no matter how crazy the flips are or how cool the fighting looks, there is once again this kind of subconscious psychological reaction that I'm noticing where it just doesn't excite me. As a matter of fact, thinking back on both of these films now, I would have much preferred if they just made these computer CGI, and just all the way through, taking out all the human actors, and that way I could just defer to, I'm watching a cartoon essentially, and be happy with the action that I see there. But that's not really, you don't get that benefit because it's this mishmash where occasionally you will see stunts and stuntmen doing amazing work, and then you're supposed to be just as excited or more excited for your hero characters, and you can't be because you know it's all just CGI and none of it really happened. So a little weird for me. In terms of some of the character things I complained about before, Splinter, they took his role down to very few scenes. I don't think that they had Splinter figured out very well for this series. I still don't know that they do. He felt better in this second film, but there was a lot less of him, so I think they just kind of avoided trying to deal with his character. It was very cool for them to introduce Kraang. I thought that was great. Brad Garrett did the voice for Kraang, and I love that he embodied some of the cartoony nature of the voice, but brought it into a more realistic place. So it doesn't sound like Kraang from the old cartoons, but it feels a lot like Kraang from the old cartoons. Just a really, really good performance job there. Bebop and Rocksteady, I think for me, were personally the standouts. I was just enjoying practically every scene that they were in. I love how their design was very, very similar to what you saw from back in the cartoon days. And once again, there was a reason why Bebop and Rocksteady were so big and muscular, and it was to offset the Turtles that were smaller and not that big, who had to rely more on their ninja training and skills. And the mashup just doesn't work right because you're watching these big giant turtles that are hyper muscular fighting these what should be seen as muscular other characters, but they're overweight and a little sloppy. And once again, there's no good tilt for feeling like there's an uphill battle where the Turtles might not win. The whole time you just think, oh wow, those big, steroided, hypered out turtles are gonna just beat the crap out of everyone. And that's kind of how it goes. I was also surprised to see the weapons use of the Turtles was played way, 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 way down, almost to the point where there was one particular scene at the end where they pulled out their weapons, and it was like, oh, that's right, I even forgot that they even had these weapons. And those weapons are such a core part of their character in the earlier versions of this that it's a little bit of a shame. At some point you're just watching the Turtles and their characters aren't totally interchangeable, but between Raphael and Leonardo, very hard to tell. Donatello, they've definitely pulled more into a certain spot where it's feeling like the good old Donatello. Michelangelo, they definitely pushed more towards feeling like Michelangelo, but the other two Turtles are still getting kind of lost in the mix. And I still am not a big fan of the Raphael design. He's just way too big, and he still looks like a monster to me. Something else I complained about with the first one, in the first review, was that they don't feel like teenagers. And in this one, I would say they took a step in the right direction with that. They definitely feel a bit more like they're out there having fun, like having fun is a bit more important than them always saving the day. So I think they kind of adjusted that a little bit. I wouldn't say they fixed it, but they definitely adjusted it. I was really pleased with Megan Fox's performance in this one, which I think I was critical of her in the first one. I don't know if she's taken acting lessons or what, but she did a fairly good job in this. I love Will Arnett's character in the second one much more than the first one. He felt very tacked on in the first one, and in the second one they found a neat way to introduce his character that really allowed for his sense of humor to come through, that kind of sarcastic, smarmy guy. It worked really well in the second one. I even liked Tyler Perry in this film, and I don't particularly like Tyler Perry or think that he's all that talented. I know he's ultra successful, but I don't know how much of that is really based on his performance talents. But I thought he was enjoyable here, and I want to see that character transform. I think they definitely set up some good elements for the next film. One thing that was a bit of a knock against this, outside of them completely detuning Splinter, was Shredder. Shredder is basically used as a writing device in this film to kind of kick everything into play, and then by the time you get to the end of the film, he's not really used all that well. And when you think back on it, it's like, wow, was Shredder even in that movie? Well, yeah, I know he was, because they had to do this, to do that, and that was all based on Shredder. But in terms of him being a character or developing it all, it just really wasn't there. And I don't know why, but when I think back on the earlier Jim Henson films, I would get really excited when I saw the classic Shredder outfit, the mask, the gauntlets with the blades. I knew they touched on that in the first reboot a little bit, and then they kind of went too far with it, with that big kind of Terminator style Shredder thing that they did. But in this film, yeah, he puts the mask on for a minute or two. Yeah, he has the gauntlets on a little bit, but he never really uses them. It felt like he wasn't even in this movie, and he was kind of used just as a mechanic for things to happen in this movie. So I hope that they'll fix that. I think they took a big step in the right direction, which is kind of the reverse of what happened in the Jim Henson movies. I think I liked this one a lot better than the first Ninja Turtles reboot movie that came out, which if you look at the Jim Henson movies, it was like the first one was really good and the second one wasn't quite as good, and then most people trashed the third one. I think they're going in the right direction with this. First one I didn't like a whole lot. This one, there was some things I really liked about it, and there's parts of it, particularly with Kraang and Bebop and Rocksteady, that felt like they were really paying respect to the source material. And if they keep doing that, I think the third one could be even better. So it's rating 6.5 on IMDB right now. I would say that's pretty fair. I might nudge it to 7 just because I would want there to be a difference from, I think I rated the first one at 6 or 6.5. There's a good step up that has happened in this movie, at least from my perspective. One last thing before I go, though. Casey Jones, they just did not get that character right. His origin is all messed up. Stephen Amell, man, this was a phoned-in performance if I've ever seen one. There was no believability in that guy from one scene to the next. You almost felt like he was a fan that won a contest to play that role or something. It was not good. Also, he does no character work from what I can tell. He's playing the same dude he's always playing, but even for doing that, he just was not believable in this role. And there was a coolness to Casey Jones. I remember Casey Jones was a beloved character back in the late 80s and early 90s, and this was not a fair representation of that. He's not quite as counterculture as that original Casey Jones was, which is a shame. So, but overall, it was fun. I'm happy I went to see it in the theater. I was looking for some mindless fun. The plot was a little more detailed and had a little more elements than the first movie. I remember saying that I thought the first movie felt like a half-hour cartoon episode that was stretched to an hour and a half. This definitely didn't feel like that. It still did feel like cartoon episodes, but it felt like 2 or 3 of them that had been put together, which was cool. And I think that they're lining up the universe to do some cool things in the next movie. So I hope they keep heading in that direction. I wish there was something that they would do. The design of the turtles is still whacked out for me. Computer animation, doing fighting, it's not as exciting when it's in a universe made of other real actors. There's something about that they need to play with and figure out. Perhaps if the turtles were fighting humans more often, and you see computer animation kick someone and they go flying through a wall and you know that that's a real actor, maybe they could help teeter that a little bit. But when it's CGI versus CGI, the stakes just get completely dropped for me when I'm watching it. So I don't know. Does the same thing happen for you guys? Tell me about it in the comments below. Did you check out Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows? Let me know all about it, and I'm looking forward to reading all that. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the original Geek, the Geek Corner. That's another difference. The other one's called Geek Corner. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you on the next show on the Geek and Dorks channel. Take care.